The city was cloaked in mist, the cobblestone streets slick with the evening rain. Shadows lingered in every alley, whispering secrets to those brave or foolish enough to listen. Isabella Conti hurried through the narrow streets, her shawl wrapped tightly around her shoulders. Her heart raced, not just from the chill of the night, but from the weight of the message she carried. It was a small envelope, unassuming yet heavy with consequences. Isabella had grown up knowing the city's dangers. Her family owed debts to men who measured power with fear, and every step she took reminded her how easily a wrong move could end badly. Yet she walked with a sharpness in her eyes, a confidence that came from surviving when others might have broken. As she turned a corner, a figure emerged from the mist. Tall, broad-shouldered, and impossibly composed, he seemed to command the darkness itself. His eyes were a deep shade of brown, almost black, and they glimmered with an unsettling light. He regarded Isabella with a curious expression, as if he had been expecting her. "You," he said, his voice smooth but edged with authority. "What brings a young lady like you into my territory?" Isabella stiffened, sensing the danger in the air. She did not recognize the man, yet something about him made her heart quicken, not with fear alone, but with an odd mixture of curiosity and defiance. I'm delivering a message," she stammered. Holding the envelope tightly, he stepped closer, his presence overwhelming, and she caught a glimpse of the sharp elegance in his features. There was power in the way he moved, a confidence that radiated from every line of his posture. "And who do you think I am?" he asked, tilting his head slightly. Isabella hesitated, then, almost by instinct, muttered words she did not fully understand in her panic. A phrase in Sicilian, a quick insult meant to buy time. The man's eyes widened, not with anger, but with amusement. A low, deep laugh escaped him, echoing through the alley. It sent shivers down Isabella's spine. "You dare speak to me like that?" he said, smiling faintly. "Repeat it," while looking me in the eyes. The words froze on her lips. No one had ever challenged her this way. The audacity, the confidence, it both frightened and intrigued her. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she repeated the insult, her gaze meeting his. For a moment, the rain seemed to pause, the city holding its breath. The man laughed again, a sound that was both terrifying and intoxicating. "I like your spirit," he said. "Few have the courage to defy me. Fewer still have the wit to survive it?" Isabella's heart pounded. Something in the way he looked at her made her feel both small and alive. The danger was real, but so was the curiosity that bubbled within her. "My name is Lorenzo Vivaldi," he said, offering no further explanation. "You should be careful speaking in my presence, but I find your defiance refreshing." Isabella's mind raced. She had heard rumors of the Vivaldi family, whispered in hushed tones in the marketplace and in the taverns. They were powerful, feared, untouchable. Yet here stood Lorenzo before her, alive and commanding, and somehow real. "I am not afraid," she said, trying to keep her voice steady, though her hands trembled slightly. "I just speak what I feel." Lorenzo's eyes softened, just for a moment. "That honesty, it's rare. It is dangerous, but I respect it." The night stretched on around them, the city seeming to fade into silence. For Isabella, it felt as if she had stepped into another world, a world where power and danger intertwined with fascination and curiosity. "You have a choice," Lorenzo said suddenly. "You may walk away now, return to your life, your debts, your safety, or you may come with me. There is much to see, much to understand. Few are offered this chance, and even fewer survive it." Isabella's pulse quickened. She did not know what drew her more, the thrill of danger or the magnetic pull of the man before her. "Why, me?" she asked. "Because you are alive in a way most are not," he said simply. "You fight, you endure, and you do not bow to fear. That is rare." Despite herself, Isabella felt a shiver of excitement. The idea of stepping into a world of power, secrets, and shadows both terrified and thrilled her. She had lived her life in quiet obedience, constrained by the debts and fears imposed upon her family. Yet here, in the rain-soaked alley, an opportunity presented itself, a chance to test herself, to see what courage truly meant. She hesitated only for a moment. Then slowly she nodded. "I will go with you." Lorenzo's smile was faint but approving. "Good. We will begin with small steps. Observe, learn, endure. Your life will change, Isabella Conti. Perhaps for better, perhaps for worse." The following days drew her deeper into his world. Isabella walked the city streets under his guidance, learning the subtle rules of power and influence. The Vivaldi family's reach was vast, their authority unspoken yet absolute. She saw men bow in fear, women avert their eyes, and whispers of curses and old vendettas passed like wind. Lorenzo was ever present, a shadow at her side, observing her reactions, testing her limits. And with every encounter, Isabella's fear mingled with fascination. She realized that beneath his ruthless reputation lay secrets, vulnerabilities that he revealed only in rare, fleeting moments. One night he brought her to the Vivaldi estate, a Gothic mansion perched high above the city. Its towers pierced the fog, and its windows glowed like distant stars. Inside, the walls were lined with portraits of ancestors, each face more stern and commanding than the last. Isabella felt the weight of history pressing down upon her. "You see," Lorenzo said, "my family is bound by more than blood. There is a curse, ancient and unbroken, that touches every generation. It feeds on betrayal, on desire, on fear. Few survive its grasp." Isabella's eyes widened. "A curse? What do you mean?" He looked at her, eyes dark and intense. "You will see soon enough, and perhaps you will help break it, or perhaps it will consume us all." Days turned into nights, and Isabella found herself pulled further into the web of intrigue and danger. She witnessed demonstrations of power, subtle, terrifying, and precise. Men who opposed Lorenzo disappeared, and rivals fell into ruin without a sound. And through it all, Isabella was both horrified and mesmerized. Yet amid the tension, there were moments of vulnerability. Lorenzo would sometimes speak softly, revealing pieces of himself that contradicted the fearsome image he projected. He told her of the pressures of leadership, the loneliness of power, and the weight of expectations that stretched back centuries. "You think I am ruthless?" he said one evening, as they stood overlooking the rain-drenched city. "Perhaps I am. But it is not hatred that drives me. It is survival for my family and for the future I hope to protect." Isabella's heart stirred, and for a moment the danger of his world faded into the background. She saw a man burdened with responsibilities heavier than most could imagine, yet capable of tenderness in rare moments. But the reality of his power always returned. One night, as they walked through a narrow street, a rival family made a bold attempt to challenge Lorenzo's authority. Men with cruel eyes cornered them, brandishing knives and threats. Isabella froze, caught between fear and the adrenaline of survival. Lorenzo's presence was immediate, commanding, and unstoppable. Within moments, the threat dissolved, leaving Isabella shaken but unharmed. She realized then that her fascination with him came at a dangerous cost. A world where life and death balanced on the edge of a knife, and where loyalty was the only currency that mattered. Later, alone in her small room, Isabella replayed the events in her mind. Her pulse was still racing, her body trembling not from fear alone, but from the intensity of the connection she felt with Lorenzo. She had insulted him once, defied him, and yet he had allowed her to survive. And more than that, he had offered her a place by his side, a chance to see and understand a world that most only whispered about in fear. As she lay awake, rain tapping softly against the window, she could not escape the thought that her life had changed forever. And somewhere deep within, she knew that her choice to stay was not simply about survival. It was about curiosity, defiance, and the unspoken bond that had begun to form between them. The night deepened, and the city slept, unaware of the new alliance that had formed in its shadows. Isabella closed her eyes, her mind alive with questions, fears, and a dangerous longing. And somewhere beyond the fog, Lorenzo watched, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "I could destroy the world for you," he whispered to himself, almost tenderly. Or protect you forever. Choose your side, Isabella. Choose carefully. And with that, the city held its breath once more, as if waiting for her answer. The city awoke under a thin veil of fog, the morning sun struggling to pierce the gray sky. Isabella Conti walked through the silent streets, her mind still heavy with the events of the previous nights. She had chosen to remain by Lorenzo's side, drawn to a world of danger, intrigue, and secrets she could not fully understand. Yet every step forward made her feel both alive and trapped, the weight of the Vivaldi family's shadow pressing on her heart. Lorenzo met her at the edge of the estate, his expression unreadable, the air around him charged with a quiet intensity. "You have chosen your side," he said softly. "Now you must see the truth of it," Isabella nodded. She did not fully understand what awaited her, but she was no longer afraid to step into the unknown. Curiosity and defiance guided her, tempered with caution. He led her through the grand halls of the Vivaldi mansion, each corridor echoing with the whispers of ancestors and the legacy of power. The walls were lined with portraits, their eyes seeming to follow Isabella as she walked. She felt the weight of history pressing down on her, a reminder that she had entered a world where every action carried consequences beyond her imagination. "You must understand," Lorenzo began, pausing before a heavy door, "that my family's power is bound to a curse. It is not merely superstition, it shapes our lives, tests our loyalty, and punishes weakness." Isabella swallowed hard. "And can it be broken?" she asked. Lorenzo's gaze softened just for a moment. "Perhaps. But the path is treacherous, filled with choices that could destroy us all. You may play a role in it, or you may fall victim like so many before you." The door opened to a chamber filled with ancient books, parchments, and relics, each item radiating history and mystery. Isabella's eyes widened as she took in the sight. Every object seemed alive with whispers of secrets, of lives and betrayals long past. Lorenzo guided her to a table where an ancient manuscript lay open. The letters seemed to shift in the candlelight as if alive. "This is the Vivaldi Codex," he explained. "It holds the knowledge of our curse, the rules of power, and the path to redemption. But understanding it requires courage, intelligence, and heart." Isabella leaned forward, her fingers tracing the faded script. The words were strange, almost magical, yet they spoke of choices, loyalty, and consequences. She realized that the curse was more than a family legend. It was a test of character, a challenge that measured who could survive and who would falter. Days turned into weeks as Isabella learned to navigate this new world. She observed Lorenzo's leadership, saw the careful ways he commanded loyalty and wielded influence. She met allies and enemies alike, each encounter a lesson in trust, power, and survival. Yet amidst the danger, moments of quiet intimacy emerged. Lorenzo would sometimes speak softly to her, revealing the man behind the legend. He spoke of burdens, of expectations, and of a longing to protect those he cared for despite the cruelty that surrounded him. "You think I am heartless," he said one evening, as they watched the city glow beneath the moonlight. "But there are limits even I cannot cross. My strength comes with responsibility. My power demands vigilance, and my affection, when it exists, must remain controlled." Isabella listened, feeling the tension between them grow. She realized that her fear and admiration had shifted into something more profound, a connection forged in shared trials, in danger, and in the rare moments when Lorenzo allowed vulnerability. But the city was not quiet for long. Rumors of rebellion and betrayal reached the Vivaldi estate. Rival families sought to challenge Lorenzo's authority, testing the limits of his power. Isabella sensed the danger creeping closer, a shadow that threatened not only Lorenzo, but her own fragile sense of security. One night, under a thick fog, Isabella and Lorenzo were ambushed in the streets. Men armed with blades and malice stepped from the shadows, their intent clear. Isabella's pulse raced, her hands trembling as she realized the peril surrounding them. Lorenzo moved with precision, his presence commanding. Every motion was calculated, every word a weapon. Within moments, the attackers were subdued, retreating into the mist with wounded pride and fear. Isabella watched, torn between terror and awe. She realized then that surviving in this world required more than courage. It required understanding the nature of power itself. When the danger passed, they found refuge in a quiet courtyard, rain-slicked and empty. Isabella's heart still raced, yet she felt a strange exhilaration. "Why did you save me?" she asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because you are part of this now," Lorenzo replied, his gaze steady and unwavering. "Your life is entwined with mine, with my family, with the choices we must make. And because I care." The word lingered in the night air, heavier than any weapon, more potent than any threat. Isabella's mind swirled. She had entered this world thinking she might observe, perhaps learn, perhaps survive. Yet now she understood that her connection to Lorenzo was deeper, more dangerous, and more compelling than she could have imagined. The following days were filled with strategy and preparation. Isabella studied the Codex, learning the rituals, the warnings, and the histories that had shaped the Vivaldi legacy. She began to understand the curse not as a mere legend, but as a force that could dictate life and death. Every decision she made carried weight, and every choice shaped the future of those she cared for. As she grew more confident, she also saw Lorenzo's humanity in sharper relief. Behind the aura of power and intimidation lay a man who struggled with guilt, responsibility, and the constant threat of loss. He trusted her in ways he did not trust others, sharing glimpses of hope and fear that he had long buried beneath his reputation. "You are brave," he said one night as they stood on the terrace overlooking the city. "Brave enough to face the curse, brave enough to face me. That courage, it is rare." Isabella felt warmth rise in her chest. She did not fully understand the depth of her feelings, yet she knew she could not turn back. Fear and fascination intertwined, creating a bond that was fragile, yet unbreakable in its intensity. Then came the day that tested everything. A rival family, determined to overthrow Lorenzo, launched a coordinated attack on the estate. Isabella found herself in the center of the chaos, witnessing men fight for dominance, lives hanging by a thread, and power shifting with every heartbeat. Instinct and courage guided her. She moved with precision, helping protect those in danger, making choices that required quick thinking and bravery. Lorenzo watched her, pride and relief mingling in his gaze. Together, they navigated the storm of violence and strategy, each relying on the other's strengths. By nightfall, the estate stood, but the cost was evident. Men and women alike bore wounds. The shadow of the curse loomed larger, and the city outside seemed more dangerous than ever. Yet amidst the chaos, Isabella and Lorenzo found a quiet moment, standing together on the terrace as rain began to fall once more. "You survived," Lorenzo said softly, his hand brushing against hers. "And you proved yourself. Not just to me, but to yourself." Isabella met his gaze, seeing not just power or danger, but trust and recognition. "I could not have done it alone," she admitted. He smiled faintly, a rare and genuine expression. "Perhaps, but you did it, and that matters." For a long moment, the city around them faded into mist and rain. Isabella felt the weight of the past weeks, the danger, the fear, the lessons learned, and the bond forged in shadow and fire. She knew that their journey was far from over, that the curse still whispered its threats, and that the city held dangers yet unseen. Yet she also knew something else, that she had chosen her path, and with it, a connection to Lorenzo that would shape both their fates. Fear had not driven her away. Curiosity and courage had guided her forward, binding her to a man who was as dangerous as he was compelling. The night deepened, and the fog thickened. From a distant rooftop, a shadowy figure watched, its presence barely more than a whisper in the wind. The figure's eyes gleamed with intent, a promise that the challenges ahead were far from over. Isabella gripped Lorenzo's hand, feeling the pulse of life and power between them. The city might hold secrets and threats. The curse might linger and test them, but in that moment, they faced it together, and somewhere, in the depths of the darkness, The future whispered its own story, one of power, loyalty, and the dangerous. Beautiful bond between a woman who dared to defy and a man who ruled shadows. The rain fell harder, drumming on the terraces and streets below, and Isabella knew that the night was far from over. But for the first time, she was ready. The storm was only the beginning.